So, we got a little bit more to get to, and WrestleMania news is going to keep flowing. If this is any indication, I've done 4 videos today. If this is any indication of what to expect next week, it's going to be a busy week next week for us with WrestleMania weekend coming up. With that being said, I just want to say that we all knew it was coming, but it is now official. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Usos for the Unified Tag Team titles is set to take place at WrestleMania. The match that all of us knew was going to happen, or that we knew that was going to happen, and was going to be how they ended, or took the next step with the Bloodline storyline. The fact of the matter is, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn may be the ones to finally dethrone the Usos at WrestleMania. And I think that a lot of people would probably say that this should be the main event. I'm one of those people that think that this should be the main event, but the fact of the matter is, does it need to be? By that I mean, would people be disappointed if this wasn't the main event? And also, I think that WWE may not want the Bloodline, have that much of an investment in the Bloodline to where the Bloodline main events both nights of WrestleMania. I think that's the reason why they don't want the Usos and Sami main eventing WrestleMania Night 1 and Roman main eventing Night 2. They want to give that investment to the women's division and have an investment in the women's division so they could have Night 1 instead. Because they're going to be more than likely, and this is one of the questions of what's next, the future of the Bloodline is in question and came into question last night on Raw. As what happens if Roman does lose? What happens to the Bloodline without the championships? Because since the Bloodline pretty much went to full strength, or was at full strength, I should say, they had every championship. Roman had the Universal title, has held the Universal title for the better part of the last 3 years almost. And the Usos have been the tag team champions both Raw and SmackDown. They won the tag team titles on Raw last year during the unification match, and they won the SmackDown tag team titles over 600 days ago. So it will be something. It will be something else, in my opinion, seeing the Usos and the Bloodline without championship gold. But the fact of the matter is, what happens to the Bloodline and what happens to the tension that likely still exists within the Bloodline if they don't hold gold? I guess that's a question we're going to have to answer at WrestleMania, because it seems very likely that at Night 1 and Night 2, we could see 2 new championships crowned. Hell, we could see a lot of new champions crowned, because it is entirely possible that Rhea Ripley will also defeat Charlotte, and entirely likely that Rhea Ripley will defeat Charlotte for the Women's Championship at WrestleMania. And that also could be the reason why they're giving Rhea the main event, because they want to have the Women's Championship match in the main event of the Showcase of the Immortals. But what happens to the Bloodline, as I've said on multiple occasions, in multiple different videos, because I've done so many videos about the Bloodline, it's at nauseum the amount of videos I've done about the Bloodline at this point, especially since the beginning of 2023. Especially since the beginning of 2023, I've done a lot of videos about the Bloodline. The fact of the matter is, I think that there is still money to be made with a Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso feud. And it is something that could be made at SummerSlam, and it doesn't need to be held off until WrestleMania next year. Because I know WWE wants to I know WWE has a problem with having a main event feud for a tag team wrestler. But the fact of the matter is, why can't you have Jey Uso versus Roman addressing the situation that took place following Royal Rumble and would have happened had the feud not been better off, had they not had a better route of going Kevin and Sami against the Usos, as opposed to Jey and Sami against Roman. That doesn't mean that Sammy and Roman. Hell, that doesn't mean that Sammy and Roman don't have unfinished business, and that don't mean that Jay and Roman don't have unfinished business. I think there is still money left to be made from the bloodline, but the bloodline needs to be broken up first for that money to be made. Now we shift over to the Hall of Fame, as there are rumors that a referee will be inducted into the Hall of Fame for the first time this year. There are rumors that a referee will be going into the Hall of Fame for the first time this year and filling up the class. I have, on more than one occasion, invested in who could be the ref. I did speak about it yesterday, of who the referee could be, as WWE has a number of potential referees that could be in the Hall of Fame. I would also like to point out that I do believe Earl Hebner is in the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame, but he is not in the WWE Hall of Fame, which is crazy to me, with the fact that he spent so much time in the WWE. But I think somebody like, with Charles Robinson being in the position that he's in, Mike Chioda being in the company for as long as he's been in, there are a number of potential referees that should be inducted in the Hall of Fame, and WWE needs to make up for a lot of lost time with that. So I think, maybe at least one referee should go in this year, and maybe it should be Earl Hebner. Just because of the fact that his brother passed away. I'm not saying that Dave, is not a potential inductee, but Dave is not in a position where he should be a first ballot. The one question I have is Vince McMahon. I honestly think that Vince McMahon getting inducted into the Hall of Fame would be a good way to silence the people wondering if Vince is going to come back to do creative, because him going into the Hall of Fame would pretty much put a cap on the idea of Vince coming back as the owner, because we know one thing that Vince never wanted and never even considered as the owner of WWE was going into the Hall of Fame, because he was not going to induct himself. I do think that maybe next year Vince going in would be better, because some of the negative press would be away from Vince, hopefully by then. But I do think Vince going into the Hall of Fame would be a good way to silence the negativity and eliminate the negativity that has been around Vince since he came back to the main roster, since he came back to the company earlier this year. I'm not saying that WWE needs to eliminate anything, or needs to do this, or needs to do that, because Vince deserves all the negative press against him. Vince deserves it because of how he handled his return. But the fact of the matter is, I think Vince will go into the Hall of Fame at some point, and whenever he does, honestly, whenever he does, it'll be much deserved. But again, as we wrapped up the last news video, I will say that WrestleMania weekend is going to be a hectic week, especially if today is any indication, because WrestleMania week, we start on Thursday with the joint show between New Japan and Impact Wrestling, and then we go to Ring of Honor on the Friday, AEW Rampage, SmackDown Go Home Show, NXT Stand Deliver on Saturday alongside WrestleMania Night 1 and WrestleMania Night 2 on April 2nd, and then we go to WWE's most populated episode of Monday Night Raw, that being the Raw After Mania. And of course, who could forget the SmackDown After Mania? Because the one bit of news that we're going to be talking about after WrestleMania is the WWE Draft, as the draft returns to after WrestleMania for the first time in a few years. Actually, pretty much since the second brand split, as it's normally been in October, but this year it's going to be in April, right after WrestleMania. But either way, I do hope that you guys enjoyed the extra bit of content today, and I will see you in the next video.